What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Modern Mortgage Show, where I interview mortgage professionals who share their stories and modern information about the industry. I'm your host, Rocco, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest today. His name is Jonathan Washburn, and he's the branch manager at Nations Lending out of Painesville, Ohio. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here on the Modern Mortgage Show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. So, Jonathan, why don't we just start off the show? Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a brief introduction to who you are?
Sure. Yeah. So, grew up in Indiana, moved to South Carolina when I was 17. I lived in South Carolina until I was 30. I was a school teacher, dean of students, and basketball coach at a school in Charleston, South Carolina. Loved my life, loved doing what I was doing. I married a girl from Mentor, Ohio, though, an awesome Italian girl with very strong family ties, and she was the first girl that had ever left, the Northeast Ohio region in her family. And after we had our second kid, she looked at me and she said, "John, could we maybe move back to the Cleveland area?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'm going to have to find a job first." Applied for a couple teaching jobs, couldn't really find anything. I had a buddy of mine that I went to college with, reached out. He's like, "John, I think you'd be pretty good at mortgages. You should come, take a job with us over here." So I did it, kind of got in, did the whole call center route for a little while, then branched off on my own. And I'm no longer a dean of students, but I call myself the dean of mortgages because I really take a lot of pride, and I have a lot of fun teaching through the mortgage process, especially to like first-time home buyers that have never bought a house before. I'm able to teach some classes to some real estate agents about different aspects of lending. So I've been in the business about 3 years now. I know not a long time, but I've been able to see my business grow pretty considerably. And like you said, I'm a branch manager in Painesville now, which has been a lot of fun for me. And mainly do a lot of purchases, do a lot of VA loans. I have been doing some refinances recently with the rates being so low, but that's kind of just a little bit about me. Former dean of students, now I'm the dean of mortgages, doing my best to educate people as much as possible on how to buy a house, what some things are that they should look out for, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was looking on your Facebook before, just entering the information. I saw Dean of Mortgages as your job title. So moving on, we're in a very weird situation as of right now. So what are you doing to get past this disruption and just uncertain period of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, the first thing I would say is that if anybody tells you he knows what's going to happen, he is lying to you, because we as a country, we as an industry have never, ever encountered something like this, right? There are kind of bits and pieces of, hey, this specific thing happened back in 2008, or this specific thing happened again in 2012, or yeah, we saw similar things like this with our country during like maybe World War I or something like that. But we've never seen the entire country ordered to stay at home for weeks on end, grinding the economy to a halt as we seek to stay safe from this coronavirus. So I think, the most important thing I've tried to remember is just to be humble and be honest, that here's what we think is going to happen, but honestly, none of us really actually know. So we're all just kind of in this together, right? A couple weeks ago, we saw rates doing things they've never done before, like dropping by like 200 basis points and then rising by 200 basis points the next day in one single day. So we just kind of all have to be patient with each other, try to be as honest as possible. I tell all the realtors I'm working with, all my customers that I'm working with, hey, look, here's what I think is going on, but honestly, we don't really know. Here's some positive signs, specifically with housing. The housing market still appears to be pretty stable, even though like the lending behind the housing market is maybe going through some tough things. One thing I've tried to encourage some of my people I help buy houses is, hey, we are not seeing house values crater like we saw in 2007, 2008, right? We're actually still seeing the inverse. The housing market's strong. So even though your 401k might have decreased, the value in your house probably hasn't. So that's good news. So maybe offering some encouragement along those lines. From what we can tell, the housing market still appears strong. But yeah, like much more past that. I mean, I'm quoting experts to people. I'm reading a lot of Barry Habib. I'm staying as much up to date with mortgage experts as I possibly can. But all of us are kind of guessing at a certain point. And I think it's important to remember that.
Okay, so based on what you're seeing right now, what do you have? Do you have a prediction for what you see happening in the future?
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I really don't. I see the positive signs that we've seen so far is that even though unemployment's rising, even though the stock market is very turbulent, even though a lot of aspects of our economy are really going through a tough time right now, one thing we have seen, as I said before, is that the housing market is still pretty stable. People are still buying homes. People are still selling homes. And perhaps most importantly, there's not a rush of people that feel like they need to sell their home right now because they're going through something catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
If that sort of thing happens, that can definitely cause housing prices to become more volatile, to become less stable. But we're not seeing that, right? I've actually been speaking to a lot of people over the last few weeks that are like, yeah, we wanted to buy a home, but we're going to wait for right now because we just want to wait until things kind of stabilize.
Yeah.
That's positive overall for the housing market, right? That we're still kind of seeing a lack of inventory, especially up here in Northeast Ohio. So the housing prices are definitely not going down. People, I would say, should feel comfortable, feel safe that the values they have in their houses are still probably good. As far as the overall future, it's tough to say. I'm hoping that I don't think we're going to have a vaccine come about very soon, but I'm hoping that we have some treatments that are shown to be super effective here pretty soon. And perhaps that will give people more freedom to get back out, to jumpstart the economy again. Most importantly, small business owners that are kind of like the backbone of our economy, help them get back out there and start doing what they really need to do. Hopefully, maybe if we can get back to that this summer, I think that'd be really good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Jonathan, you're an instructor at the Military Mortgage Boot Camp. So for the viewers watching, can you just explain a little bit about that and tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Military Mortgage Boot Camp is an organization that was started by a former Marine, now loan officer, and another loan officer that he kind of gotten to know pretty well. All right. Jay McMakin and Michael Fisher are the two guys that run this. And basically what we've noticed is that when it comes to VA loans, there are a lot of myths that exist about VA loans that wind up hurting veterans down the road. So for instance, there is a myth out there that basically says that if you as a seller accept a VA loan, that means that you are going to have to pay more fees than you would have to pay on a conventional loan and on an FHA loan. And this is because for a lot of lenders, they don't really understand the VA guidelines the way they should, and they wind up charging a bunch of fees to sellers because they don't think they can charge them to the veteran, right?
Yeah.
And what we found is actually, from a lending perspective, we're actually allowed to eat those fees ourselves so that the seller and the veteran doesn't have to pay for them. And so I teach a class to real estate agents and other loan officers explaining, hey, look, here's 6 myths that exist. And the worst part about this is what happens is when we believe these myths, the veteran is the one that ends up getting screwed, right? Because if a seller has a conventional offer and a VA offer that are the same, he's often going to take that conventional offer because he thinks it's stronger, because he thinks he has to pay less fees. And it's not even just equal offers. I have literally worked with veterans that have offered $10,000 or $20,000 more on a house, and they've gotten their offer rejected in favor of a lower conventional loan because that listing agent believed a myth about a VA loan that he thought it was ultimately going to cost his veteran. So, here at Military Mortgage Boot Camp, one of the things we do is we just try, we want to educate people. We want to show them, hey, these myths that you've heard are not true. And here's why they're not true. And, obviously, as a listing agent, this doesn't mean you have to accept every single VA loan that you get. But you should at least know that it's not an inferior offer to a conventional loan just because you might think, oh, veterans don't have to put any money down, right? This means they're probably less qualified, when in actuality, all the data shows that veterans are just as qualified as conventional buyers, usually way more qualified than FHA buyers. And we just want to get out there and make sure that veterans are getting their fair seat, a fair shot at the negotiation table.
So do you guys educate just loan officers and real estate agents, or do you educate veterans as well?
So I have done a few things for veterans. I've done some classes for veterans to talk to them about their VA benefits. It's mainly for real estate agents and for loan officers, though, because what I've found is if you're a veteran and you're putting an offer on a house, typically you're going to take the real estate agent's advice because that's their field, right? So you might be like you're a professional at your craft. The real estate agent is a professional at his or her craft, right? So we need the real estate agents to understand all of the rules, all of the guidelines, all of the ins and outs with the VA loan, so that they are instructing their veterans as best as possible, and so that they're treating VA offers with the respect and with the level of care that they should be treated.
Definitely, and yeah, and it's a shame because most veterans don't even know that they've earned this benefit.
Right.
Are you a veteran yourself?
No, I'm not. My grandfather is. My father-in-law is. And when I speak to my father-in-law, who's a Marine, this is why they don't know that, right? Because they've been in the military for 4, 6, 8, 10 years. And then that last day when they're getting discharged, it's like, hey, go in this room and they're going to tell you about your VA loan benefit for 30 minutes. And now go into this room, they're going to tell you about your VA health benefits for an hour. And then go into this room, they're going to tell you about the GI Bill for 30 minutes. And you're like in the midst of this huge, life-changing moment in your life where you're no longer going to be in the military. You're about to go into civilian life. And you're not able to like listen coherently to like everything that they're telling you about your VA loan, right? So you're right. A lot of veterans themselves don't understand their VA benefits. I've spoken with veterans. They're like, well, I already used my VA loan before. I know I can't use it again. Well, that's not true. Like, you can use it as many times as you want. You can have 2 at a time sometimes if you want, right? So yeah, there's just a lot of myths out there. So that's why, like you asked, I have taught a few classes to veterans. It's mainly real estate agents and loan officers. But yeah, it's definitely something that we want to get the message out there about all the pros of the VA loan. It really is the best loan a lot of people are ever going to be able to get. And we want veterans to be able to use that benefit which they have earned, which they are entitled to.
Yep, and it's good that you guys educate loan officers as well, because most loan officers offer VA loans, but not many of them know, the true ins and outs, and then they end up misadvising the veterans.
Right.
So it's good.
True story. I've actually been teaching a class with a loan officer in it, and in the middle of the class, a loan officer stood up and said, "You're wrong." It's like, "You're wrong about this. I know this isn't true," right? And I was able to stop everyone. Let's look at this. Let's pull up the VA guidelines directly. And he's like, "Wow, I can't believe how often I've done it differently and how many veterans I've hurt in the process," because he really truly did believe that like what he thought he knew was correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really important message we're trying to get out. It's one of my favorite things that I do as a loan officer is teach these classes to kind of further help veterans.
Absolutely. So what would you say is the most rewarding or satisfying thing about helping, the veterans get into homes, or just being a loan officer in general?
So the most rewarding thing about being a loan officer in general for me is probably working with first-time home buyers. And I've had the unique opportunity on 3 different occasions to help former students of mine from back when I was a high school teacher. I've been able to help 3 former students of mine actually purchase their first homes.
That's
and
awesome.
that was like, those were specifically really cool experiences for me, because like I remember teaching you freshman history, and you were mad that I asked you this question about Napoleon on a history test. But now here you are buying a house, you have a great job, you're married, you're killing it, and you're buying a home, and I get to be with you on this first like this huge moment of your life. That's really fun for me. It's super rewarding, and I think that's one of the reasons I really like doing what I do, which is mainly purchase. There's a lot of good benefits you can have with like refinances. Help people save a lot of money, pay off debt, different things of that nature. But helping that person buy his first home, there's nothing like that. And just the excitement that they get, the look on their face, the pictures that they send me, that's kind of one of the things that really, really energizes me.
Definitely. I can definitely see how reconnecting with your old students and helping them get into homes is fulfilling for you. So shifting gears here, when you first started out 3 years ago, what were some of your struggles or obstacles that you faced early on?
That's a great question. So I would say two struggles that I faced early on. One struggle was being able to separate work from my life. That work-life balance. When you're helping somebody buy a home, and sometimes things go wrong, right? Sometimes you have things come up. Sometimes, you're working with someone that just barely has enough money for the down payment. They're buying this house because they want to save money on their rent, and they barely have enough money for the down payment and closing costs and one appraisal, right? And you order an appraisal, and that appraisal comes back $15,000 short, and the seller and buyer can't make it work. So now that person that you're working with, that you've developed a relationship with, they just lost $500. Yeah. And they might cry to you on the phone. They can't even do it again. They can't look for another house. This is terrible. They already broke their lease, and now they don't have a place to stay. Things of this nature, and being able, it was very difficult for me to just close that box and go home and be with my wife, be with my family, right? As I've gotten more experience, I'll say that I still genuinely think I care just as much, but I have learned to kind of understand, hey, no matter how good you are in this industry, sometimes things still go wrong, and it just happens. And what we can do is be encouragement, is be a calming voice when these bad things happen, when these tough things happen, to try to help them through it. I think the other part that I really struggled was the fact that you couldn't approve everybody, right? You talk with someone on the phone, and their life stories are almost just tragic, right? I think specifically about this awesome lady. She was a single mom with 4 teenagers, and she had a great job. She had a lot of money in the bank, but her ex-husband was a jerk and ruined her credit. And because her credit was so bad because of him, there was a bankruptcy on there, nothing we could do to help her buy a home. Yeah. And I knew, just realistically, this is probably someone that does deserve a home. She has good money. She has lots of money in the bank. All of her own credit history is really good. And she's got 4 teenagers that really want to get out of the apartment, but there's just nothing we can do. And that the whole having to tell people no was always a very tough thing for me. What I have learned, though, is that a clear and simple early no is way better than a, hey, yeah, maybe we might be able to do this if we just do these couple things, and dragging it out for 3 or 4 months, keeping them needlessly hoping, needlessly, sometimes, hey, it's going to be 6 months. Hey, because of that bankruptcy, it's going to be 2 more years, things of that nature. But hey, here's what you got going for you. 2 years from now, that bankruptcy is going to be gone. Your credit's going to be up in the 700. You still have a great job. You have all the money in the bank. You're going to be great from there, from that point on. I think those are the 2 things that I probably struggle with a lot.
Yeah, being upfront and honest with them is definitely better than, like you said, dragging it on. So if you were talking to yourself 3 years ago, or you were giving someone, a loan officer that's just starting out, what tips or advice would you give them, or your younger self?
It's a great question. So I would say, I would tell to to Jonathan Washburn, who was just on the job for 3 months, I would say, look, no matter how good you are, bad things are still going to happen. And your job is to work through those with people. right? Kind of one of those things. You always feel good when you get a contract and you get into processing and it flies through underwriting and you close in 3 weeks and nothing bad happened and you feel like you're an awesome loan officer. But I think the real test of how successful and how good you are at this job is when things go poorly, how do you respond? Mm-hmm. And I would just challenge my former self, hey, look, the best loan officer that has ever existed still sometimes loses deals because things happen outside of his control. And it's how you respond in those moments with the realtors, with the buyers, with the sellers, with the real people that you're working with. It's how you respond in those moments that's going to tell whether or not you're going to kind of succeed at this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's everything in life. How you deal with adversity shows your true character.
Yeah, for sure.
So in recent years, since you started, technology has made its way into the industry. So how would you say this has affected you and your business?
I would say that technology has streamlined some things, but it hasn't replaced anything for me. So for instance, I have an online application that clients can fill out. And oftentimes, they might text me at work, hey, I want to talk to you. I don't have a lot of time. And I'll say, hey, you can fill this out. That'll enable me to get kind of the bare bones of your application together for us to work on. But hey, I'm still going to call you. We still need to have a real conversation about what you want to do, what your most important goals are, all of those things. And so for me, technology has supplemented. It hasn't replaced. Yeah. I would also say, social media has been really huge for me. I realized about a year and a half ago that I really liked what I was doing, right? In your first year in a new job, you're like, hey, I feel like I might be good at this, but do I really want to do this? Is this something that I really want to make my career? And I realized about a year and a half ago, yeah, I really do want to make this my career. I want to be committed to it. So I started, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, all of that stuff. I just started hey, here's information. Here's information. Here's information. It's been really cool that I've been contacted by people I've never met because they saw a video I made about VA loans. Mm-hmm. I had a realtor in Tennessee call me. Hey, I saw this video you did on VA loans. Can you explain this to me? And that's just really cool how technology has given me a platform to be able to get the message of whether it's VA loans or first-time home buying or just a bunch of different things. One of my videos on YouTube with the most views is just a simple video on closing costs and what types of closing costs you're going to have on a loan. And I've had people reach out wow, this is so helpful. Thank you so much. I had a former student watch that and then call me, and then I was able to handle her loan for her because I made this video. So yeah, I think technology has been a really great thing for our industry. It's helped us to streamline some things. It's helped us to get information out to people, which is ultimately what we want to do, right? That's what you're doing with this podcast. You're trying to educate people, tell loan officers, tell realtors, tell home buyers what's going on in the modern mortgage market, right? And that's what we're trying to do. And technology, without technology, you and I couldn't be doing this, which is just really cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. Technology definitely allows tedious tasks to be streamlined and automated, but there's always going to be that personal touch and human touch to it. So, and you mentioned social media. What modern strategies are you using in terms of social media? You mentioned you make some videos.
Yeah, so I do a lot of videos on Facebook and YouTube. Mm-hmm. I'll format them a little bit differently for Facebook compared to YouTube, just because you kind of need different things on each platform. But recently, I've been doing a lot of just market updates. Here's what's going on with interest rates. Here's what's going on in the lending field. Here's what's going on with the forbearance that you may or may not be allowed to have on your current mortgage payment. Feel like we're all inside a little bit more, and we may all be on social media a little bit more. So I'm trying to stay in front of people a little bit more often to just give them daily, weekly updates. But yeah, I do a lot of just videos. I've done a lot of VA loan videos, obviously, because that's a passion of mine. A lot of first-time home buying videos, and just try to anytime I talk with an agent that says, oh, a loan officer told me this, and I realize that's wrong, I like to make a video about that because, the real estate industry like a lot of other industries, is a learn by doing sort of thing, right? And it's learn by doing and learn from other people that have been doing it longer. So if one loan officer in 1997 tells a realtor the wrong thing, but then that realtor thinks that's correct and tells all of her realtor friends for the next 10 years to do this, now all of a sudden, the entire real estate industry could believe a myth about something that's actually not true. And as you know, mortgage guidelines update all the time. You know, mortgage guidelines in the last month have dramatically changed as all of these things are happening on the secondary market, and appraisals are different. Appraisers are treating properties differently. So it's just really important. Like, hey, this may have been true at one point. It probably was true at one point, but it's no longer true. And here's how we need to respond today.
Awesome. So last question. So where do you see all of this going in the future in terms of technology, social media, and the way it impacts the mortgage industry?
It's a great question. So I think that there are certain loans. There's like a segment of the lending industry that is kind of scared that technology is ultimately going to take all of our jobs, right? Like, 10 years from now, are we going to be able to develop an app that makes the loan officer completely irrelevant? I don't think that that's ever going to happen, but I do think that technology will probably come about that will push some of the some less quality loan officers out of the job, right? I don't think technology is ever going to replace the loan officer. I don't think technology is going to replace the realtor, but it could very well push the lower producing realtors, the lower producing loan officers out of their job. I think there's always going to be a place for, good loan officers, good realtors, good lenders to supplement what they do with technology and not be replaced.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if I'm just being honest with you, there are certain parts about my job that companies would probably hope that they could get automated. And I want to prepare for that, right? What am I doing? How am I preparing for that? Building relationships with real people so that, those are the types of things I'm trying to do to prepare myself against that.
Yeah, it's definitely important to adapt and adapt to the new technology. But I agree with you. I don't think there'll ever be technology to replace a loan officer because there's always, like I said, that human touch and human element to it. But definitely there's going to be technology that allows, those tasks that you don't like doing, allow them to be streamlined and automated.
For sure.
Well, Jonathan, I really love what you're doing. I had an amazing time talking with you today, and I really appreciate your time for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, brother. It was a real privilege and pleasure for me. I think what you're doing is awesome. Keep it up, man. It's really cool to see other people, to meet other people that are really interested in and invested in educating people about mortgages. And to a lot of people, mortgages seems kind of a boring subject, but to me, it's like, no, it's awesome. So I love seeing what you're doing, and thanks so much for having me on.
100%. And thank you to all the viewers for watching, and we'll see you again next episode.